Hello dear students, today we will discuss about the cerebral hemispheres. At the end of the session, you will be able to explain the development of the central nervous system and the ventricles, explain about the cerebral surfaces, its lobes, the sulci and gyri along with the functional areas. You'll be able to explain about the white fibers and the lateral ventricle, explain about the blood supply and its applied anatomy. Let us look into a clinical problem. It is a 61-year-old woman who collapsed and was brought in the stage of coma, admitted to the emergency room. On examination, paralysis of the left side of the body, mainly the lower limbs, with some sensory loss of lower limb and foot was found. She was, however, able to swallow normally and had no difficulty with speech. Now we will look into the various aspects related to the neuroanatomy, and finally we will find the solution for this problem. The development of the brain consists of the swelling, prosencephalon, then you have mesencephalon and rhombencephalon. The prosencephalon gives rise to telencephalon and diencephalon. The mesencephalon continues as it is. The rhombencephalon gives rise to metencephalon and myelencephalon. So the telencephalon further becomes the cerebral hemisphere. It becomes the cerebral hemisphere. Whereas the diencephalon is also called as thalamus. Is also called as the thalamus. The cerebral hemisphere grows or overhangs the space within, the cavity within, which is called as the lateral ventricle on either side, lateral ventricle. The thalamus, on both half of the thalamus, in between you have the third ventricle. The mesencephalon, I told you that it grows as it is, so mesencephalon continues as it is, and the cavity within the mesencephalon is called cerebral aqueduct. The rhombencephalon, which gives rise to metencephalon and myelencephalon. The metencephalon will give the cerebellum, and pons, whereas the myelencephalon gives rise to the medulla oblongata and spinal cord. Myelencephalon will give rise to medulla oblongata and the spinal cord. The cavity within them will be the fourth ventricle. So the forebrain vesicle is also called as the prosencephalon. It gives rise to the centrally located diencephalon, forming the thalamic complex and the third ventricle. The overhanging telencephalon, it forms the cerebral hemisphere and the lateral ventricle. This is a view of the lateral ventricle from a superior view, in which you can see that this is the anterior horn over here. Then this will be the inferior horn. The one behind is called as the posterior horn, and this part is called as the body. You can notice that the lateral ventricle is growing within the cerebral hemisphere. Now the cerebral hemisphere are two in number. You have the left and the right, and it is connected by the corpus callosum. So it is a connecting one between the two cerebral hemisphere, connecting white fiber. There are three poles. There are three poles for the cerebral hemisphere, namely the frontal pole, the temporal pole, and the occipital pole. It has two borders, which are the superior medial border and the inferior lateral border. And there are three surfaces which is called as superior lateral surface, medial surface and inferior surface. Now let's look into the detail of superior lateral surface. So remember, this is anterior here, this is anterior aspect, and this is the posterior aspect. This is the frontal pole, this is the temporal pole, and this pole is the occipital pole. Now we can notice that there is a lateral fissure. This is the lateral fissure. It's a little deep, okay, and deep to the lateral fissure we can notice the hidden cortex, which is called as insula. Then we should look for central sulcus. This is the central sulcus over here. The pre-occipital notch, so it is just before the occipital lobe. So this is the pre-occipital notch here. The parieto-occipital sulcus, okay, it is at the superior medial border. So this is the parieto-occipital sulcus at the superior medial border. Now these structures will divide the cerebral hemisphere into 4 lobes, okay. So the central sulcus, if you continue it down and if it meets the lateral fissure, it is going to divide it into a frontal lobe and a parietal lobe behind. Now the lateral fissure, if you will draw an imaginary line going behind, and also you have to connect the draw a line between the pre-occipital notch and the parieto-occipital sulcus, okay. Then the lateral fissure, if you continue it backwards, it will divide the temporal lobe and the parietal lobe from the occipital lobe. So this is how we divide them into 4 lobes. Now looking into the frontal lobe, this we know that this is the central sulcus. So in front of the central sulcus, it's called as precentral gyrus, precentral gyrus, and this is responsible for area number 4, motor area number 4, for delicate movements, for very delicate movements. Then we also have 2 sulci in the frontal lobe, okay. It is called as superior frontal sulcus and inferior frontal sulcus, dividing it into 3 gyri: superior gyrus, superior frontal gyrus, okay, superior frontal gyrus, then middle frontal gyrus, okay, and then inferior frontal gyrus, okay. So at the posterior end of the superior, middle and inferior frontal gyri is the premotor area, premotor cortex, or area number 6 for the gross movements, okay. So if we see here in this diagram, this is the central sulcus, and we said that this is the precentral gyrus, okay, for area number 4. And then in front of that, all this together, this area, okay, which is actually the posterior end of the superior, middle and inferior frontal gyri, is important for the gross movements, and it's called premotor area, premotor cortex area 6, okay. So it's area 6 over here. Then the posterior end of the inferior frontal gyrus, so if you take it here, it's marked for you. This is the inferior frontal gyrus. The posterior end of the inferior frontal gyrus, you have Broca's speech area. It's Broca's motor speech area, area number 44 and 45, okay, motor speech area 44 and 45. Rest of the frontal lobe is having frontal association area, which is usually concerned with the future. Okay, it also helps you in making decisions, okay, in thought process, in making decisions, good decisions or bad decisions. Okay, now coming to parietal lobe. Now this is again, we have to always look for the central sulcus. Okay, after knowing the central sulcus, the post central gyrus, this will be the post central gyrus, right? Post central gyrus is having somatic sensory cortex, area 312. Okay, so the area number 312, and the rest of the parietal lobe is usually parietal association area, and it recognizes present environment. Okay, what's happening presently. Okay, moving on. The temporal lobe, in the temporal lobe, again we have 3 temporal gyrus. Okay, so this is the superior temporal gyri, this will be the middle temporal gyri, and this will be the inferior temporal gyrus. Okay, so auditory area 41, in the middle of the superior temporal gyrus. So here it is shown to you, this is the middle of the superior temporal gyrus, has auditory area. Okay, auditory area which is important for hearing, area number 41. The rest of the temporal lobe is mainly associated with temporal association area concerned with the past. Okay, so when you want to correlate any information with the past, then it is occurring by the rest of the temporal lobe. Another important area which you should know is the second motor speech area. Okay, it's called as sensory speech area. Okay, it's not motor. Okay, second motor speech, or it is called sensory speech area. So this is the end, this is the location for it. So how to identify? It is a part of the temporal, okay, part of temporal and parietal association cortex around the posterior end of the lateral sulcus. So you will look for the lateral sulcus, go to the end of the lateral sulcus, and that is the area which is related to sensory speech area. It's called Wernicke's area. Okay, it has parts of both temporal and parietal association area. Now the occipital lobe. In the occipital lobe, there is visual cortex area number 17, and it is usually surrounded by both temporal and parietal association areas. Okay. The medial surface. In the medial surface, we can see sulcus cinguli. Okay. So first of all, this is called corpus callosum, CC. I'll just write it as CC, corpus callosum. So the sulcus which is very close to the corpus callosum is called callosal sulcus. Okay, callosal sulcus. Then just above that, okay, or surrounding it will be the sulcus cinguli. Sulcus cinguli. Okay, so between the two, this is called as, okay, this is sulcus cinguli, and the gyrus which it surrounds will be the gyrus cinguli. Okay, gyrus cinguli. Okay, and then you should look for paracentral lobule. Okay, so here it is seen as this area, this one, paracentral lobule. Okay, so it will be from here to here. Okay, paracentral lobule. A paracentral lobule consists of both motor and sensory parts related to the lower limb and perineum. Now coming to calcarine sulcus, the calcarine sulcus is seen here. This is the calcarine sulcus. Upper lip of the sulcus receives the lower field vision, okay, or lower visual field, and the lower lip of the sulcus receives the upper visual field, okay. So here also there's like an upside down representation. So when you learn the optic tract, also you will see that at the retina there is an upside down representation. Then again at this region there is an upside down representation. So twice you have this happening, and that's how you see a straight image. Okay, parieto-occipital sulcus limits the visual area anteriorly. Okay, so this is the parieto-occipital sulcus here. Okay, this is the parieto-occipital sulcus, which will limit the visual area anteriorly. Okay, the gyrus singuli is related to the visceral brain. Okay, the visceral brain. So that means that all the sensations within the body or related to the organs is felt here, okay, or is represented along the gyrus singuli. Now coming to the nuclei of the telencephalon. So firstly we should understand that whatever we just saw, the outer appearance of the cerebral cortex, it is usually gray matter, and then the white matter is within. Okay, so here also we can see this is the outer is the gray matter, okay, and then inside we have white matter, right? So the gray matter consists of collection of nuclei or cell bodies, and white matter is only the axons or the nerve fibers. Now there are some nuclei of the telencephalon which is within, or it is more deep, okay, it is deep. They are called as the nuclei of the telencephalon, and the names are caudate nucleus, okay. So you can see here in this photo the caudate nucleus is also, the name starts with C, and it also is C shaped, comma shaped, okay. So the caudate nucleus, and it ends in a nucleus called as amygdaloid nucleus, okay. So there is a nucleus over here, it's called amygdaloid nucleus. Then there is a lentiform nucleus, So the lentiform nucleus has two parts. It has medially the globus pallidus and laterally putamen, okay. So these are the two parts of the lentiform nucleus. Then there is another set of nuclei which is called as claustrum. And collectively they are all called as basal ganglia. Okay, they are called as basal ganglia. So in this section actually you have to understand where it is. So if you see the lateral sulcus and deep to the lateral sulcus, this region, this one is the insula. Okay, this is the insula. So this section is taken at the level of the lateral sulcus, at the level of this insula. Okay, and it is a cross section. Or also called as horizontal section. Now and this is anterior part, this is anterior, and this is posterior. Okay, so here we can see that this dark nucleus over here, this is the caudate nucleus. Okay, caudate. Then this is the lentiform nucleus. So lentiform nucleus has two parts to it, okay. So the medially it is called as globus pallidus. Here this is the globus pallidus over here, and laterally it is the putamen, okay. So this whole thing is called as lentiform nucleus. And can you see a small strip over here? This strip is the claustrum. This is called as the claustrum, okay. And we cannot see the amygdaloid because amygdaloid is more deep. Okay, so this is the claustrum. Okay, this section is also good to see the internal capsule. capsule. So I'll draw it here. This is called as internal capsule here. Okay, so we will be seeing details about it. Fine. Now looking into the fiber system, the white fibers. So there are three types of white fibers. One is called as association fibers. The second one is called as commissural fibers. And the third one is called as projection fibers. So now you should be wondering how the information goes from one part of the brain to the other part. Okay, so for that we need this fiber system. The association fibers helps in transferring information on the same side of the hemisphere. Okay, so if you want to transfer information from one gyrus, so this is one gyrus, to another gyrus, okay, it's very close to each other, so it's called as short association. Okay, so they are like arcuate fibers. And if you want information to go from one lobe, okay, one lobe to another lobe, so there is long association fibers, and they are also called as long superior longitudinal fasciculus, inferior longitudinal fasciculus. Okay, so by this the information goes from one gyrus, okay, let's say from the frontal one gyrus to the occipital. I want information to go all the way till here. Okay, so it will be through the superior longitudinal fasciculus. So these are called as the long association fibers. If it is just from close by, from one gyrus to another gyrus, then it is called short association fibers. Next, coming to commissural fibers. So remember, association fibers, the information is only in one hemisphere. Okay, so either it could be from one gyri to another gyri, or from one lobe to another lobe, but there's no crossing here. In commissural fibers, there is information going from one hemisphere to the opposite side, okay, and this passes through something called as commissural fibers. The largest commissural fiber is called as corpus callosum. So you can remember C, commissural fiber, CC, corpus callosum. Okay, you can just remember they're like connecting also, like connecting from one hemisphere to another hemisphere. And the other commissures are anterior commissure, posterior commissure, and habenular commissure. Okay, so all of them have the same commissure names at the end. The third type of information has to go from cerebrum to the other parts of the brainstem. Okay, so these are traveling through the projection fibers. Okay, so these are traveling through the projection fibers. Either the information is going from the cortex going downwards, that's descending, or from the brainstem coming upwards, that is ascending. Okay, so here you can see that there is information. This is the cortex here, right? And from the cortex you can see the fibers are going down. This is the narrow part, which is the internal capsule, which we just saw previously, and then it is going down, and there is a crossing over here. This is related to the medulla. Okay, so these are called as projection fibers. Okay, so these are called as projection fibers. Whereas this CC, the corpus callosum, okay, it is a type of commissural fibers. Okay, commissural fibers. Further, we will also see the other commissural fibers, the anterior commissure. Okay, the anterior commissure, it is present in the anterior wall of the third ventricle. Okay, so as we saw in the first description related to embryology, that the third ventricle is related to diencephalon, right? So this, or the thalamus. So this part, what you are seeing here, this is actually the thalamus. Okay, so and the third ventricle is cut open. Okay, the section is passed through the third ventricle. So third ventricle, you are seeing the third ventricle. Okay, so this thalamus and the third ventricle is open. Now anterior wall of the third ventricle connects parts of the cerebrum which is concerned with the olfactory pathway. So where is the anterior commissure? This is anterior commissure here. Okay, this one, that is anterior commissure. Okay, it is present in the anterior wall of the third ventricle. It connects parts of the cerebrum which is concerned with olfactory pathway. Now there is posterior commissure. it is present in the, it's also the inferior lamina of the pineal stalk. Okay, so first we search for the pineal gland. So can you see this small gland over here, this gland? Okay, this is the pineal gland. Now if you look at the closely to the pineal gland, it has two lamina. Okay, the superior lamina and the inferior lamina. Okay, so the inferior lamina of the pineal stalk connects the nuclei in walls of the aqueduct and the third ventricle. Okay, so this is the inferior lamina over here. I'll try to use another color. This is the inferior lamina. Okay, so this inferior lamina, as you see the next, actually this is called as the midbrain. This is superior colliculus over here. This is inferior colliculus. So this is the midbrain. This inferior lamina of the pineal stalk connects the nuclei in the walls of the aqueduct. Okay, this is called as aqueduct. Okay, walls of the aqueduct and the third ventricle. Okay, so that's the posterior commissure. That's the posterior commissure. The habenular commissure in the superior lamina of the pineal stalk. Okay, so the, again look at the pineal gland, and I told you that you have to search for the two ends of the pineal gland. So this one here, okay, so this is the habenular commissure in the superior lamina of the pineal stalk, which connects the stria medullaris thalami. Okay, so this is related to thalamus. Now looking into the corpus callosum, a few details related to it. The corpus callosum makes point to point connection between the two cerebral hemisphere. Okay, it is exactly point to point connection. Now in this view, this is actually a superior view in which you are seeing the corpus callosum and how it is connecting the two hemispheres. Okay. Okay, firstly let us look into the parts of the corpus callosum. Okay, anyway, this is anterior and this is posterior, right? So this is called as this is called as rostrum here. This is rostrum. Then there is a bend which is called as genu. This is called as body, and this is called as splenium. Okay. If it's not clear, okay, I hope I'll just mark it again. So that's the rostrum. This is the where you see the bend, right? That is the genu. That is called as genu. Then this entire piece is called as body, and on the posterior aspect it is called as the splenium. Okay, so the body ends anteriorly as genu and posteriorly as splenium. The fibers connecting the two frontal poles pass through the genu. Okay, so this is one frontal pole here and going to the other frontal pole. Okay, so these are fibers here connecting the two frontal poles pass through genu, and they are called as forceps minor. Okay, so they look like forceps, so they are called as forceps minor. So forceps minor passes through genu, connects from one frontal pole to another frontal pole, and the fibers which connect the two occipital poles pass through splenium, and they constitute as forceps major. Okay, so from one occipital pole to the other occipital pole. Okay, so you feel the distance is also a little larger. Okay, it is passing through splenium. It is passing through splenium, and it is called as, okay, it is passing through splenium. It is called as forceps major. Forceps major. Now let's look into the internal capsule. It's very important. So we already saw this diagram in relation to the nuclei of the telencephalon. Yes. Now the internal capsule. So the internal capsule has anterior limb. This is called as anterior limb, and this is called genu over here. This is genu, and then you have the posterior limb. Okay. Okay. Now the anterior limb is present between caudate medially. Caudate is present medially, and lentiform nuclei laterally. Okay. So you can identify this as the caudate nucleus. This is the caudate nucleus medially, and this is the lentiform nucleus laterally. Sorry. Okay. Lentiform nucleus. Okay. Then the posterior limb is between the thalamus medially and lentiform nucleus laterally. Okay. So this is thalamus, and laterally again it is the lentiform. The anterior limb, okay, between caudate nucleus and lentiform nuclei, it carries the frontopontine fibers. Okay. So this diagram which is here, this is also called as corona radiata. Here we can appreciate how the fibers from the different parts of the cerebrum, they have to travel in between the at the internal capsule, and then they have to go down to the brainstem, okay, or they have to rise up. Okay. So now the anterior limb contains fibers which are called as frontopontine fibers. The genu consists of fibers which are the pyramidal fibers. Okay. So the pyramidal fibers pass through genu. And the posterior limb, which is between the thalamus and the lentiform nucleus, anterior 2/3 of the posterior limb has pyramidal fibers. So if you are asked, pyramidal fibers travel through genu and anterior 2/3 of the posterior limb. The posterior 1/3 of the posterior limb, okay, like if you take the posterior limb and let's divide it into two parts. So, so if I take the posterior limb and divide it into two parts, like say this is the anterior 2/3 and this is the posterior 1/3. Okay, so posterior 1/3 will carry sensory fibers. Next, the retrolentiform part. Retro means behind the lentiform. Behind the lentiform carries optic radiation. And sublentiform, it is below the lentiform. Okay, it carries the auditory radiation from the auditory cortex. Then the temporal lobe. Most posterior part is the temporopontine fibers. Most posterior, it is formed by the temporopontine fibers. So here we are describing the different fibers which are passing through the internal capsule, through the anterior limb of internal capsule, through the genu, and through the posterior limb of internal capsule. I hope you are able to appreciate the corona radiata, like how the fibers are passing through the different parts of the cerebral cortex, okay, from the different lobes, how they are traveling down. Okay, so if you notice here in this diagram, here this is the part which is the internal capsule. You know, this is the narrow part. Okay, internal capsule. Now these please remember this internal capsule is the passing of these fibers, okay, either ascending or descending fibers. Now they have to pass in between the nuclei of the telencephalon, the basal ganglia. So at times if it is going to be very narrow due to other reasons, due to any pathological reasons, so there could be compression of the internal capsule and any of these fibers may be affected. So next, moving on, the white matter of the cerebrum, the third type, which is the projection fibers, and they are the ascending and the descending tracts which pass through the internal capsule. And also I told you the name corona radiata, which is the shape like a fan like shape, and basis pedunculi. Okay, so here we can see that the projection fibers, and here I can explain to you the descending fiber, which is also called as the pyramidal tract. So here you can see it is originating from the motor area, and then it travels through different parts of the cerebral cortex. You can see that they are all the fibers are like a corona radiata over here. Okay, this is the corona radiata. Okay, they start from the fifth layer of the bed cells. Okay, they start from there, then the arrangement is like corona radiata, then it passes through the internal capsule. See, it passes through the internal capsule, then it travels down, and that is in between the nuclei, then it travels down, and then you can see that it is passing through the midbrain, then the pons, okay, midbrain pons, then it will come to medulla oblongata, and at the lower level of medulla oblongata it is going to decussate. Okay, decussation of the pyramids. Okay, so there is crossing, this is called as decussation. Okay, so crossing of fibers, how many? 80% of the fibers will cross, 80% will cross. Okay, so 80% will cross, and then it goes to the level of the spinal cord, and it is also called as lateral corticospinal tract. Okay, it will be seen in the lateral aspect of the spinal cord section. Okay, this neuron, which starts from the motor area of the cortex and goes all the way through the internal capsule, and then it has crossed, and then it has synapsed at this level of the spinal cord. This is called as first order neuron. Okay, first order. And the second order starts from the level of the spinal cord, so that is from the ventral horn cells, and then it goes to the muscle. Okay, it goes to the respective muscle, so that will be the second order neuron. Okay, that's why the motor tract, the pyramidal tract, is also called as two order neurons. Whereas you can see that 20% of the fibers have not crossed. Okay, that is here. Can you see these fibers coming down? So these are the 20%, okay, which have not crossed. So they descend down as it is over on the section of the spinal cord, and they are called as anterior corticospinal tract. Okay, anterior corticospinal tract. Then at the level of spinal cord they will cross, and then the second order neuron starts from the ventral horn cells and it goes to the muscle. Okay, so finally all the fibers of the pyramidal tract will cross before reaching the target. Okay, so that's why it's called as crossed fibers. And if there is going to be any lesion, if a patient comes with hemiplegia of one side of the body, that means the fibers have taken origin from the other side of, that is, if it is right side is affected, that is the left hemisphere, the fibers are coming from the left hemisphere. Okay, coming to the cavity of the cerebral cortex is also called as lateral ventricle, and the shape of the cavity is like C shape. Okay, C shaped cavity, as you can notice in this diagram here. This is a lateral view and this is a frontal view of the lateral ventricle. It is present within each hemisphere and it communicates with the third ventricle through the interventricular foramen, also called as foramen of Monro. Foramen of Monro. Now it has basically four parts. So there are three horns, okay, and one body. So the anterior horn is present in the frontal lobe. The inferior horn is present in the temporal lobe. The posterior horn is present in the occipital lobe. The body is present in the parietal lobe. So as you can see in this diagram here, this is the anterior horn. This will be the inferior horn. And here, which is projecting backwards, is the posterior horn. So anterior horn in the frontal lobe, inferior horn in the temporal lobe, posterior horn in the occipital lobe, and the body, that is the body, in the parietal lobe. Okay, so here also we can make out the two ventricles, and you can see the small communicate. This is the third ventricle here. This is the third ventricle. Okay, third ventricle. So can you see a small communication between the two, between the lateral ventricle and the third ventricle? So that is called as foramen of Monro. Foramen of Monro. Okay, and so through the foramen of Monro, it is reaching into the third ventricle. So in this section, this is actually coronal section. This is called coronal section. So in coronal section, we can see this is the lateral ventricle. Okay, so this is a part of the lateral ventricle, and this is the third ventricle. This is the third ventricle. So third ventricle, it is between the thalamus, between the two thalamus. This is thalamus over here and this thalamus over here. So in this coronal section, the third ventricle is seen like a slit-like in between the two thalami. Whereas in, if you remember previously, we were discussing in the medial section, the sagittal section, in which the third ventricle was cut open. Okay, it was cut open. So here, this is another view in which you can see the ventricles, the lateral ventricle. You can see interventricular foramen of Monro, and you can see the third ventricle here. Okay. Yes. Moving on. The nerves which are related to the cerebral cortex, or the nuclei which will be in the cerebral cortex, are the olfactory and the optic nerve. Now coming to the blood supply, it starts from the circle of Willis. Okay, the circle of Willis is formed by anastomosis between the vertebral and the carotid system. Okay, so which is the internal carotid system. Okay. The vertebral system gives the posterior cerebral artery, and the carotid system gives the anterior and middle cerebral artery. Okay, so in short, we can write this as posterior cerebral artery, PCA, and anterior cerebral artery, ACA, and this is the middle cerebral artery, MCA, which is coming from the carotid system. Further, it will give branches to the meninges, so meningeal branch, then to the cortex, the cortical branch, then the central branches, and it will also give choroidal branches. Okay. Here in this, we can see that there are, we can use actually 3 colors. Okay, so here, like if you will notice, this is the okay, this is the area for the anterior cerebral artery. Okay, the superior lateral view, anterior cerebral artery. Then we can see the middle cerebral artery. Okay, this is the middle cerebral artery branches. And the territory for its supply is here, middle cerebral artery. and this is for the posterior cerebral artery. So we are going to see it more in detail in the next. However, before going there, we have to look into something called as homunculus. This is homunculus. As you can notice, the person is lying upside down, and it is the representation, both motor and sensory representation. You have to imagine that he is lying on the central sulcus. Okay, so as you know, central sulcus is dividing the frontal lobe and the parietal lobe. Okay, so the area in front of the central sulcus is the related to motor, and the area behind the central sulcus is related to sensory. Okay, so now this is the lateral sulcus over here. Okay, this lateral sulcus, and you can observe there's a large area for the tongue. Okay, and then for the lips, for the mouth. Okay, there's a large representation for the face. Then there's again a large representation for the thumb. Okay, then the hand, then the upper part of the body. Okay, this hand, then the upper part, the trunk, and also a part of the lower limb. So okay, the upper part of the lower limb. Then you see that this is the medial surface. This is actually the medial surface over here. From here, medial surface. So over the medial surface, we have the representation of the lower limb and the foot. So the perineum, all this comes in the medial surface, and that's related to the paracentral lobule. Okay, so the anterior cerebral artery, like here it's very clear, what is mentioned in blue color is the anterior cerebral artery coming from the carotid system. Then this is also the supply of the anterior cerebral artery, but this is the medial view. Okay, yeah. Now anterior cerebral artery supplies the motor and sensory cortex of the lower limb. Mainly it is related to the lower limb, because we said paracentral lobule and all that. Next, middle cerebral artery supplies the motor and sensory cortex of the rest of the body, and also the auditory area. Okay, remember the auditory area here, it was there. And then the speech area, both the Wernicke and the Broca's speech area, motor speech area, all of them will be supplied by the middle cerebral artery. Okay, so if there's any problem to the middle cerebral artery, probably these functions will also be lost. Then the posterior cerebral artery is related to the visual cortical area. Okay, so it's basically related to vision. You can remember like this. So the occipital lobe over here, and also in the medial surface you can see that. It's also part of the temporal pole. Okay, part of the temporal pole is also supplied by the posterior cerebral artery. The central branches, both anterior and posterior, which is divided medial and lateral, which supply the gray matter or the nuclei of the telencephalon, the internal capsule, and the diencephalon. Okay, so these are also very important. Like if there's any going to be any injury to the central branches, again we can have some problems related to the pyramidal tract. Okay, like we just said that it may be because they pass through the internal capsule. The choroidal branches are very important. It helps in the formation of choroidal plexus of the lateral ventricle and the third ventricle. So if there's again any problem related to this, it may cause issues related to the formation of CSF. Now the applied anatomy. So if the anterior cerebral artery is affected, it is going to cause contralateral hemiparesis. Okay, so the meaning of contralateral means it is opposite side. Hemiparesis is weakness of the limbs. Okay, hemi is half side of the body, and hemisensory means loss of sensation. So we can also say hemi anesthesia. Okay, hemisensory loss, especially related to the leg, foot, and the perineum. As it is also supplied, it also supplies the paracentral lobule. Remember this. And there is also inability to identify objects correctly, and there is apathy. What is apathy? Apathy, you know what is sympathy and empathy. So apathy means he will have no feelings. Okay, lack of any feelings, and also he may show personality changes. Okay, then the middle cerebral artery, if it's affected, it causes contralateral hemiparesis. Okay, so again opposite side there is weakness of the half of the body, and hemisensory loss. Okay, so again there is a loss of sensation. Remember, it is supplying the both the part of the frontal lobe and also the parietal lobe. Okay, and mainly it is related to the face and the arm. If you have to remember the homunculus, the aphasia. Okay, aphasia, if the left hemisphere is affected. Okay, remember the motor speech area and the Wernicke speech area is related to the blood supply of from the middle cerebral artery. If it's going to be affected, it is going to cause aphasia. Okay, usually rarely seen with the right hemisphere. Contralateral homonymous hemianopia, this is related to vision. Okay, so hemianopia due to optic radiation damage. Okay, so because optic radiation fibers are damaged, we can get contralateral homonymous hemianopia. And anosognosia, it means that he is not able to identify certain objects. Okay, so this is if the right hemisphere is affected. The posterior cerebral artery causes injury to that will cause contralateral homonymous hemianopia. Okay, with macular sparing. This is because the calcarine cortex is damaged. That's why you get this homonymous hemianopia, contralateral homonymous hemianopia, and you get macular sparing because the occipital pole receives the collateral from the middle cerebral artery also. Okay, so the occipital pole has a blood supply from both posterior cerebral and collateral branch coming from middle cerebral artery. That's why you get macular sparing. Visual agnosia, that means if the patient sees certain things, he will not be able to identify them. This is left occipital lobe ischemia. Impairment of memory if there is damage to the medial aspect of the temporal lobe. Okay, so he may have also loss of memory, or some parts of his memory may be affected. Anterior choroidal branch, if it is injured, it will cause same symptoms like the posterior cerebral artery, and some degree also of hemiplegia. Okay, so in the case which we had started with, it is a left-sided hemiplegia and hemianesthesia. It is suggested of cerebrovascular accident of the right cerebral hemisphere. Remember, it's the left-sided hemiplegia, and hemianesthesia, that is loss of or paralysis of one half of the body, left-sided, and loss of sensation. It is probably cerebrovascular accident of the right cerebral hemisphere. Extent of paralysis to the leg and the foot. Okay, this shows that probably it's the right anterior cerebral artery which is affected, or its branches which are blocked by the embolus or thrombus. The diagnosis was confirmed by the PET scan. Okay, so this is how you need to analyze the case. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture, and I would like to dedicate this to my professor, Dr. A. Krishnamurthy. He has been my role model in learning the neuroanatomy, and one of his favorite saying is that you have to crystallize your thoughts. So whatever you think, you need to try to ponder over it, whatever information you get, and you need to crystallize your thoughts. Thank you very much.